Hello, happy Thursday. We are going to add Kaden in here. This lighting's really funky. That's okay. Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Going good, you?
Good, good. How's your week been?
Been busy. I get posted on my stories yesterday. There's just more activity in the market.
Yeah.
Rates are tracking down, and I think people are. Someone said it best to me that we have like this 6 month backlog of people who wanted to buy homes because rates were too high.
Right.
So regardless of where rates are at right now, we have 6 months worth of people that are like, I'm going to try and make this happen in 2023.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing a lot of people getting the ball rolling. It's just a good time to buy. It's a nice little pocket.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we talk about this almost every time we
Yeah.
have a live. There's never a bad time to buy. It's just when the right time is for you, but there's a lot of benefits to like this specific market right now. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm excited for kind of what we have plans for live going forward.
Yeah,
Of
me
just like
too.
not so much answering. I mean, it is a question, but more so just like taking terms and
Right.
then kind of explaining
Explaining
them
them.
in a deeper level on both sides. So looking
Yeah.
forward
Okay.
to talking on all this going forward. But
Yeah.
um, a contingency.
What is it?
What is it? Oddly enough,
There are,
go ahead.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
for it.
I was
No,
gonna
no,
say,
no, you
oddly
go.
enough, someone on Instagram sent me a message about a contingency today. I'm not joking.
Oh, funny.
Yes.
That's funny. And you
Yeah.
said, wait until 1 o'clock and I can explain it to you. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll give you an
um,
answer, and then if you want more answers.
exactly. But something I think that intimidates people, I think a little bit because it seems like it's a lot of moving parts, but in reality, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is. And it's really just, it's a protection for either the buyer or the seller that's put in place by whoever is typically writing the offer. So the most common ones are going to be a financing contingency, a home inspection contingency, and um, there's another one. I mean, like a home sale
Yeah,
contingency or a pending sale contingency is another big one. Um, so it's just in place to protect typically one party or the other.
absolutely. I'll say I do know I can lean more on like the pending sale contingency because that's what I deal with more on the loan side. If you want to talk on contingencies to deal with offers, like I'll
Sure.
let the expert talk on that. But um, on the pending sale side of things, this was the exact question: is like how would you pre-approve someone based off contingency? And all we do is we basically go, in theory, you are selling your house. You are gonna, then we work with like, hey, who's your listing agent? What is your net expected proceeds? You're gonna take that money, move it to this house, maybe pay off some debt. So we get a playlist like, hey, in theory, what are you doing with your money? And based on this, if you follow this plan, you're pre-approved.
Yeah.
And then obviously placing an offer with a contingency of upon a pending sale of my current home, it protects you because you're like, well, all my money's tied up in this home. I can't get this home. Where people get in trouble is when they waive that and go, I'll risk it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So basically, when you put that contingency in place, you're saying the buyers purchasing this home is contingent, which basically means reliant on the fact that we will sell our current home that is currently under contract. Or if you have a home sale contingency, it's contingent on the fact that we will list our home and sell it. And if for some reason you cannot, then the buyer will usually get their earnest money back. So those contingencies are what is in place to protect the earnest money, which we can go over on another
Mhm.
live, but it's basically just a good faith deposit from the buyer to the seller, typically held by a third party, saying like, this is money we are potentially willing to lose should the worst case scenario come into play. But I haven't had experienced a loss in earnest money for clients yet. I know it's a possibility, and I make it very clear to all my buyers that there's always a possibility, but we always do what we can to protect that money for you. So that's typically what a contingency is protecting.
Absolutely. For the most part, that's kind of like the rundown of the pending sale side of things. Contingent offers is what you might hear. And that's where, kind of going off of like what is a contingency, that's what's been so great about this market is it's not unheard of. People are getting contingent offers accepted because there's less competition. If, like I mentioned in my story yesterday, if we get back into a high buyer demand with rates hitting a point where everyone's just like, okay, I think that helps us out a lot, you might start to see those contingent offers, maybe the frequency of them come down.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's one less thing a seller has to worry about. And it's funny because it's like, I think of it as like a train, because you can have a couple homes in a row, in theory, be contingent. And that one at the end is like, I have to wait on 2-3 homes to sell.
Right.
Eventually,
yeah.
Right. So
they can get a little bit hairy. And a lot of sellers try to avoid accepting contingent offers just because there's a lot of factors that go into it, right? You're adding 2 whole new parties into the equation by having the seller of the home that wants to buy your home, and then the buyer of the home that wants to buy the home that your buyer is trying to sell. So that's 2 new parties with a bunch of new contingencies. And so then like I said, it can get a little bit hairy if you get into the fact where it's like you're contingent on a home with a buyer who's also contingent on a home with their buyer, and then you have all these different parties, and it can get a little bit spooky sometimes. So just depending, but like you said, a lot of contingent offers are getting accepted right now. So if you're in a position where you need to sell a home to purchase a new home, now is a great time to get your foot in the water and see what's out there for you.
Absolutely. And then on the offer side of things, of writing an offer, there's several different contingencies set in place. You want to talk on a couple of the main ones?
Yeah, I think the biggest ones are going to be the home inspection contingency. So basically, as a buyer, you say this transaction is contingent or reliant upon me getting a home inspection, and then ensuring that everything within that inspection meets my standards. And then from there, you can either move forward or decide to back out. And as long as you're within that window, it's set by you as the buyer. You can typically back out of a transaction with getting your earnest money back. And it's not always the right thing to do, but you can, as long as you're within that window, you can back out for any reason. It does not have to be for anything found within the inspection. But again, you want to make sure that you have a certain level of morality as you go into it. But, at the end of the day, this is about you as a buyer. And if the home isn't the right fit for you, then that's okay. Make the right decision for yourself.
Yeah, I think that people need to know that there's a little bit more protection in that inspection period than they might think.
Right.
For the most part, we are both people that would say, hey, make sure you're making the right decision. We're not going to rush people into hey, just put an offer on the house and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's more so you want to know what you're doing going in and not trying to backtrack at the inspection period. But yes, that is where you have the most protection. If something were to come up where you're I don't know if we can, again, it's a morality thing, and maybe if it's communication with the seller sometimes if it gets to a certain point. But that's when you're most protected.
Yeah.
Most of the time you're fine. I've heard of silly stories of how people have been able to get out with their earnest money.
Yeah, and those contracts are written really interestingly because they make it pretty hard for a lot of buyers to lose their earnest money. They make it tough because it can be a lot of money. Some people put thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars as their earnest money deposit, and there's potential to lose it. So you just have to be really careful, and there are a lot of protections in place, but there's always potential that it will happen. And then there's the financing contingency, which means that the buyer is reliant upon getting financing before they can close on the home. And they typically have a certain period of days, I think it's 21, but it can be changed within the contract to make sure that they have their financing locked in and locked down. Do you have anything to add to that one on your side?
No, I've had a few conversations of, someone coming to me and going, hey, if we waive financing, from what I understand on my end, it means that if there's anything that I foresee that could be an issue, that if I'm if I'm going, hey, their loan in their file is pretty straightforward. I don't see anything that would come up within my control, then that is a part of a financing contingency. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that sounds right. I know we've had this
Yeah.
conversation before.
But that's a lot of pressure, or just responsibility that goes on a lender of going, if we're in that, we're not in that
Right.
market anymore. But we potentially could be if we're going, hey, how rock solid are they? Do you see any issues? And no, I don't. So then that's just one more thing to add to maybe benefit getting the home, and then letting your lender be a rock star, I guess, and then it happens.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, like we said, the contingencies are all just a protection in place for you. So you can have one contingency, but then it might run out. And so knowing that you have another one on here to like back you up, and then another one. Another fairly common one, and some agents might argue this, is the title contingency. And it's basically just reliant on the fact that you can get title to the home. But most title and escrow companies like won't let you move forward with the purchase if you can't get title for the home. So some agents will argue that it's just a mundane document that's unnecessary. But again, it's just another contingency to protect yourself. So if it's something you feel is important and you want all those protections in place, then it's not going to hurt you as a buyer.
And I mean, they're there to protect both sides of the party too.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but contingencies with an offer, like we said, there to protect, and then the idea of a contingent offer, kind of a contingency, right? Still along the same lines, a little bit easier than you might think. It's just, it's very much the same thing we always say is make sure you reach out to a lender to figure out your numbers up front, because I've started talking to someone who's going to be selling their house, and I started talking to them in December. The house is being listed for sale next week. So it's like, we've already started to work through all these numbers to know where we're going to land. Because I was like, you probably should know exactly what your numbers should be or going to be before that home's even listed, so that you're ready to go if you get an offer, and vice versa. So it's just communication and making sure your ducks are in a row.
Yeah. And then one other thing from a buyer's perspective about contingent offers, if you're on the search and you see that a home is contingent, let's say on like Redfin or the one home search that your agent has you set up with, that basically means that the seller is under contract with a buyer who is contingent upon selling their home. So contingent properties can still be marketed, unlike one that is like pending sale. So if someone writes an offer with their home that's already under contract, it's a different type of contingency. And in that case, the seller cannot continue to list their home. But if it's a contingent offer based on the buyer of the seller's home to sell their property, then it can still be marketed. So you are still more than welcome to go view the property. You'll just want to have your agent reach out and see like what the details are about that contingency and if there's anything that you should know. And they still have the right to deny that offer. But if you come in with a good offer, there's typically a clause within every contract that's contingent to allow for new buyers to come see the home.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's like a certain amount of time, right? I can't remember the amount of days.
I think it's like 4 days typically. It's called a bump period. But it can be changed within the contract. So you can shorten it to 2 days, 1 day. And basically, if you receive another offer, the person who's under contract currently has X amount of days to get their home sold. So if it's already been on the market for 67 days, then you get another offer and there's a 2 day bump period, then they'll have 2 days to get their home under contract. So that agent and the sellers will typically need to scramble. And if they can't, then their offer is automatically bumped by the new offer that comes in. And then you're not under contract on that home anymore, and the new buyer is.
No, I mean, I think we nailed it.
You guys are all so much smarter after this live.
And I guess, so like I alluded to it at the front, we were talking last week and trying to have I think a little bit more structure versus like just random questions. But if we can go out like talking on terms going forward, if there's ever questions that come up like, hey, what is this? Or something along those lines, we'll be happy to talk on it. But we're hoping to just come on here 15 minutes, give you a quick rundown on a certain real estate term so that you can keep that in the back of your brain for whenever the time comes. And
you'll have this as a resource as well.
100%. And we're going to have a better cover photo from now going on.
Woohoo! Look at us go.
Structure.
I know, we
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. As always, we'll give you guys a couple seconds to ask any further questions that you have about anything that we talked about today. If you have anything that you want to learn more about, please always reach out to Caden or I, and we're happy to make sure that we discuss this on here. So, yeah, otherwise, thank you all so much for joining. And we will see you next week. And we're always going to try to do these at 1 o'clock on Thursday. We have a quick question. What's the craziest contingency you have come across? I haven't come across anything super crazy yet in my career.
I haven't either, but the financing contingency is kind of a crazy one, honestly, because there's things that could come up along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be something that's associated with title that we can't do the loan, and then you potentially, like, I don't know what that would be deemed as, title versus financing at that point, but it just takes a lot of confidence from everyone involved. So
yeah, definitely.
That one's kind of crazy, but I don't know I don't think I've seen a crazy one yet.
I know. I mean, I think like we talked about a little bit, the home sale contingencies, if there are several contingencies involved, like home sale contingencies involved, those can get really, really scary.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many different factors and parties to consider. But I haven't dealt with it yet. We did have another question come in. So it's with contingencies, what should the lender be aware of as far as locking the interest rate?
Where's that at? I didn't even see it.
I have like a little question box.
Oh.
It just came up. Yeah, it was from Jermaine.
What was it one more time?
With contingencies, what should the lender be aware of as far as locking the interest rate?
And I guess so, how I'm hearing that question, are we talking about contingency of a pending sale?
It just says with contingencies, what should the lender be aware of?
I mean, everything. I mean, we get to see the contract, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Honestly, when it comes to, I'm trying to think of all the different things. I'm going to throw appraisal in there too, kind of.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I don't know if it's considered a contingency, but it's right in there with inspection. Inspection really has no effect on us, apart from potentially getting seller credits back and adjusting the loan. So it's always good to be on the same page. Like, I don't like to do things until I know what's going on with the inspection. Appraisal is a huge one. We want to know what someone's plan is because in theory, a buyer could write an offer with their agent and say, we're waiving the appraisal, but it's like, okay, if you do that, awesome. The lender still has to get an appraisal because the appraisal was made to protect a lender and the lending of money.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if you wanted to buy a home for $450, the appraisal came in at $400. If you waived your appraisal contingency, you would be on the hook for $50,000
right
outside of the loan, which is almost kind of which was happening in 2020.
Yeah.
And then as for financing, that's obviously need to know. And then in regards to locking interest rate, I think the only one that truly comes into play is the trying to buy a home while trying to sell your current, putting in a contingent offer while trying to sell. Because you have to you need to wait until your home is pending to then understand the time frame and how long you need to lock for. Because if you don't get another contract bumped in, you could be sitting there waiting, right?
Right.
Trying to see, hey, I need my home to sell. You're basically under contract contingent for maybe 60 days. And if you lock your rate for 30, that's what you either got to kill the current lock or pay to extend it. So you just want to wait and to see, hey, once your house goes under contract, that's when we know how long it's a lot, how long that home's going to be pending for, and then how long this contract's going to last, how long it's going to take till after. I would probably always lean a little like 45 days just to be safe when it comes to a contingent offer, but doesn't affect interest rate. It's not a factor involved, but it affects how long you want to have your interest rate locked for.
Yeah, that makes
sense. That
was
a lot. A long answer.
No, it makes sense. Good answer. Good information for sure. So yeah, thank you for those questions. I haven't seen any other come across. So again, like if you do have any, we'll wait another 30 or so seconds. And then, and as always, like don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. We're happy to answer any and all questions and just be a resource for you as, you you learn more about real estate or the process, or, if it's something that you want to move forward with, we're here for you.
Absolutely. And like Kaylee was saying, we're going to try and do the same time every week, Thursdays at 1 p.m.
Yes.
PST.
Make it easier on you.
Yes. Yeah, you know where to find
Awesome.
us. All right.
Well, thanks everybody so much for joining, and we will see you next Thursday at 1 p.m.
See you, everyone.
All right. Goodbye.